like the whole dying thing is just a progression. It's hard to lose a loved one for sure,
Mm-hmm.
but I know that they're in a great place. It just wasn't my time to go,
Mm-hmm.
but when it is, that's great. I'm not, a lot of people are afraid of death,
Mm-hmm.
and there's no reason to be afraid.
Welcome to Stories of Hope in Hard Times, the show that explores how people endure and even thrive in difficult times, all with God's help. I'm your host, Tamara K. Anderson. Join me on a journey to find inspiring stories of hope and wisdom learned in life's hardest moments.
My guest today was born and raised in Logan, Utah, as the middle child between two brothers. She grew up spending as much time as possible outdoors, water skiing, swimming, riding motorcycles, and skiing. She is known as a survivor. I say that because she has survived cancer, a heart attack, a divorce, and an aortic dissection, which we'll have to have her tell us about. She has 3 amazing children, a daughter-in-law, and now a grandbaby who are the center of her life. I am pleased to present Teri Benson. Teri, are you ready to share your story of hope?
Yes, I am. Thank you for having
Awesome.
me today.
This is fun. So, one little known fact about Teri is that she is an adrenaline junkie. And just to give you an example of that, I was scrolling through her social media feed and it shows she went and hiked Angel's Landing not long ago. And for any of you who have not hiked Angel's Landing in Zion National Park, it is like one of the hardest hikes, and the trail gets really narrow and you have to hold on to this chain. So, Teri, tell me why the adrenaline junkie in you desires these crazy things, but they're fun, right?
Yes, absolutely. All of it's fun. You know what? I think I was just born with it. Like I have my two brothers are exactly the same.
Oh,
Like they're
really?
just, yeah, they're kind of like the same adrenaline. Just ride your mountain bike as fast as you can, or, just ski like, you know, 55 miles an hour, whatever. But I've kind of always been that way. And, it was suppressed for a long time. Um, when I was married in it was a bad marriage. And
Mm.
so, everything kind of went by the wayside and I was just surviving every single day and not really having any joy. So, yeah, I just kind of put that on the back burner for a while, but it's back.
So it's part of your true things, and it's one of those things that brings you joy then, is being
Mm-hmm.
outside, pushing yourself to the limit,
Right,
exploring and doing new things that you haven't done before then,
right,
right?
right. Like if there's a skateboard sitting there, I've got to get on it, I've got to just try it.
Why not, right?
Yeah.
Now, why don't you tell me a little bit about that living in survival mode before you got your divorce? What was that? What did that look like? And what things did you learn because of it?
Um, well, I didn't really know that I was living in survival mode
Mm,
until after, like, even after I got divorced, I was still just hanging on by my fingertips. Just there was no joy in my life. It was just like, okay, I've got to get up. I've got to go to work to a job that I hate, but I'm
mm,
grateful for it because I need the health insurance and I need all that. But I feel like looking back, because I did die for 26 minutes during the first open heart surgery. And I thought that would have, October 23rd, 2012 would have been technically it should have been my last day. Like
mhm.
I, wasn't supposed to survive. And now I look back and I think, how sad is that? Like, how sad was my life? Like, that kind of sucked.
Yeah.
I haven't been living. And I thought,
Mm,
man, I just, I need to just be grateful for every day I have and experience all the things that that is out there, and serving people and sharing my story and helping them. Um, it's something that I thought, I don't want to look back on my life and think, gosh, your life kind of sucked, because it
Mm,
did for a long time. And I thought, I don't want that kind of life anymore. And, if you're going to be happy, you have to make that choice,
mm,
you know. And I could sit around and feel sorry for myself, or, because, oh, I had a heart attack, I got divorced, all this stuff. And I'm like, I don't want to be that example to my kids either.
mhm.
You can do hard things, but it's you. I mean, you can have all the support, and I did. I had an army of support, but ultimately, it's you that has to make the choice.
Yeah.
And I had to make that choice over and over and over again, so many times in that first year of recovery.
On a daily
So
basis almost, right?
pretty much, yeah. When you wake up and you're like, oh, it wasn't a bad dream. It was really, it was real.
Mhm.
Yeah. So,
Yeah.
yeah, I don't know. I just feel like you have to just live life on purpose,
Mm.
and you have to have something to live for, something to look forward to, and find a purpose. Like, had this ever happened to me, I would have never known that I could write. I haven't wrote anything
Mm.
since I was in college back in
Right.
1980. There you go. I mean, a term paper, hated. No, I don't want to write anything. And
Mhm.
people said, you've got to write a book. You've got to write a book. And I'm like, how do you write a book?
Mhm.
And you put it out there, and I had people literally come into my life to make it happen.
It's
So,
interesting how when something's supposed to happen that, it's like I think I read a quote once that says the universe conspires to make it happen, that when it's supposed to
well, for
happen and you
sure.
decide that you want to,
Right. And
miracles happen.
yes, I truly believe in miracles. And there was a lot of people. I mean, I had to still write it, but there were people that, you know, helped to put it all together and, make it happen. So, because, and I didn't know, I would have never figured out that so late in life, that I love to write, you know? And
But you had to be slowed down just a little bit.
yes, you have to really hit the bottom. No, I'm just kidding. But, it's a blessing. Bad stuff happens to people every day, every
Mm.
single day. But I think what shows your true character is how you decide to deal with it,
Oh, I love
you
that.
know. And during my recovery, I just thought, I don't want my kids to feel like you can't find the joy. Like, I could have been miserable and grumpy all the time, but I didn't want my kids to see that as an example of when bad stuff bad stuff happens to you. You don't just, woe is me. You kind of have to figure it out and pivot and you know make some changes.
Yeah.
So yeah.
So why don't we go back and why don't you tell me a little bit, first of all, what an aortic dissection is?
Okay.
And just to kind of give an idea of what it is, I don't think I really understood what it was until I read your book. And then I was like, oh my gosh, it's a miracle she's still alive. So, because it's not one of those things like heart attack, which you had
Yeah.
one of those too, by the way.
Yes.
Holy cow.
Right.
Um, why don't you tell us maybe what the difference is between a heart attack and an aortic dissection, just so that we understand?
Right. I had my heart attack in 2008. No, 2009. And I had just had a normal day, and I came home, and it was almost like a light switch went off. And I just had this horrible front jaw pain. Like, someone was just twisting the inside of my neck. And I was like, what
Wow.
is happening? And then it kind of started to go down into my left arm,
Mm.
excruciating pain. So I literally go over to the laptop in the lab in the, in the family room and Google. And I'm like, these are symptoms of a heart attack. 48 years old. Like,
Jeez.
I don't, I'm, I don't get a heart attack. Like,
Right.
I take pretty good care of myself. So we ended up going to the ER, and it was a heart attack, but they couldn't actually figure out why I had it because there were no blockages. Like there was,
Really?
yes. And so my cardiologist came in like a couple of days later and said, we've done all the testing we can do, and there's really no reason why you should have had a heart attack except for stress.
Wow.
And yeah, stress can kill, and it definitely can. So I had to, he said, you need to like figure out what's causing you so much stress and you need to make some changes. And so I'm like, yeah, I probably need to get divorced. So I ended up doing that about 9 months later. I actually filed for divorce and bankruptcy the week before Christmas.
Oh my
So,
gosh.
yes,
Wow.
yes.
Oh my gosh. So with
So,
Christmas time coming up, I mean,
yes,
was that a good step to take? Or, I mean, I know it was hard, but talk me
right.
through what you were thinking as you were doing that.
I just knew that I needed to get out of my marriage. He was an alcoholic. And so my kids were old enough to know, what was going on, and did the stuff that I never thought I would have to do in my marriage and be on my own. And then, of course, the house went into foreclosure. So then I had to move into like a rental. And, it just was a spiral, like bad. And, and I'm just like living each day, just going through the motions.
Mm.
And when I was 50, I had the aortic dissection. So, there's distinct factors when you have a heart attack. Like, something's wrong. Like,
Right.
it's painful. With an aortic dissection, I've read other people's stories and talked to other survivors, and some of them have pain, some of them don't. Some of them have a weird stabbing in the back of their chest or in their back. But I just had a little stinging pain under my sternum. So I
Really?
knew it wasn't a heart attack.
Right.
So I had gotten up that day, went to work, went to the gym, ran like 5 miles of sprints on the treadmill, and getting ready for bed that night, I just felt like a tearing, like burning. And that's the thing with an aortic dissection, you don't know you're dying. So most people
Oh
don't make
my
it to the ER.
gosh.
And there's a lot that they don't diagnose it in the ER because it's hard to diagnose. So they just
Mm.
get sent home and then they die.
Oh my gosh.
So, and that was it. I didn't have any other symptoms. But you have your heart, and then your aorta comes up and
It's the
arches
big
down.
artery. Yeah.
The big artery, so it goes the arteries to your brain, and then it comes down and it goes to all the main organs. All
Right.
your, so the aorta is pumping. That's what's keeping you alive. My aorta dissected, which is tear. It tore down into the root of the aortic valve,
Oh god.
and then it tore up around and then all the way down into my abdomen. And honestly, when I think about it, I think I don't even know how I survived.
Wow.
So, yes, they went in and my doctor worked miracle after miracle. So, I do have a new aortic valve. They replaced it and then have rebuilt my whole aorta. So,
Wow.
maybe I'm a little bionic. I'm not, but I don't have any superpowers. I wish I would have come back with that. Yes,
That's pretty funny. Now,
but
what's interesting about you going to the hospital to begin with, because you said it was just kind of like a little heartburn or something. You
mhm.
had an interesting experience that kind of pushed you to go. Why don't you tell me about that?
Yes, I would have never gone to the ER. I'm not that girl. Like, I'll be fine. I'll be fine. And so I had Googled, I was laying in bed. It's late. It's probably 12 or 1 o'clock. And I Googled stinging pain in chest. And of course, everything that came up is go to your cardiologist or go to the ER. And I'm like, I'm not doing that.
Mhm.
So I just lay down to go back to sleep. And I don't know if I fell asleep, but I was laying there and I distinctly heard my dad say, get up, go put your sweats on, and have McCall take you to the ER now. And it wasn't his kind voice. It was like, you're in trouble voice. And my dad had died 10 years before that. And I don't know if I dreamed that or if I heard it, but it scared me to death.
Mm.
I sat up and I thought, okay, I need to do that. I need to do that. Like,
Mm.
so McCall was home from college for a couple of days, and I peek in, and it's like 1:30 in the morning, and she's watching Netflix, of course. So she was awake. So I said, take me to the ER. I know it's kind of dumb, but that. But first of all, I never would have gone to the ER had I not heard my dad's voice
Mm.
and felt scared about it. Like,
Mhm.
and second, if I had gone to sleep, I definitely would have been dead by probably within 3 or 4 hours, because I would have just internally bled. So yeah, it's the craziest thing. Well, and it's hard to diagnose. So they took my blood, everything came back, no markers for like a heart attack, no enzymes. Blood pressure's fine, heart rate's fine. I have no fever. And it's kind of like, that's why it's hard. And the only way you can detect it is if you do a CT scan. And just as an afterthought, the doctor's like, you know what, let's just do a quick CT scan. And of course, I'm just like, is that necessary?
Mhm.
So, and that's when they seen it. And literally 2 minutes later, I was in an ambulance being rushed to St. Mark's Hospital. So
For open
I'm
heart
like,
surgery. My
yeah,
goodness. So the surgery in and of itself was crazy, and you don't remember hardly anything. Well, you were out, right?
no,
And you also
right,
died.
yes,
Holy cow, right?
right.
So you
Well,
were dead
yeah,
for 26 minutes
right.
and you went to a beautiful place. Why don't you tell me about that place?
You know what? It's like the most meaningful thing that's ever happened to me. And it was really hard when I wrote my book initially to talk about it, because there were kind of no words to explain it. Plus, it was just so close to me. I couldn't, like, and I didn't talk about it for a long time, because for a very long time, I wished I had died. And
Mm,
because it was the most amazing feeling I've ever felt. And, I didn't see my dad. I saw there was a lot of colors and a lot of, I want to say, beings. They were people, but they were beings, but I couldn't make out their faces.
mm,
But they all were familiar. I didn't recognize anybody, but everyone was familiar.
mm,
So I'm sure it's just generations and generations and generations of people that, I'm from, that maybe that was who they were.
mhm,
And like the smell and just the beauty. And I was suspended, like my feet weren't, like I wasn't walking. I was
mm,
like kind of floating. It's weird. But I remember thinking, oh my gosh, this is home. This is where I want to be.
mm,
And I definitely felt like I was in, you know, the presence of something very, very powerful, and so much light, so much glory. Like I think I said in my book that it was just like a warm blanket
mm,
that someone had wrapped around me, and it was just like I felt like I was home.
mm,
And it then all of a sudden I was actually started to get pulled away. I felt that, and everything got further and further away. And apparently that's when I came back.
mm,
But yeah, it's a place we all want to be. And this is just a blip of what's to come, like
mm.
life here on earth, because there is a whole like eternity out there. So, and it's where we all want to be, and we're going to be with our families. And, it's the place I did want to stay. But
Yeah, I bet. So
yeah.
describe the feelings. I know you say it's hard to describe. It felt like home, so like comfortable,
Yeah. And it was just like and
familiar.
very familiar, but also just I want to say it was just more like love, just the surrounding love and the surrounding beauty. Like there's no words to explain what I saw. Like colors I had never seen before.
Hmm.
Like just and everything was calm, everything was beautiful. And yeah, it just, like, for the longest time, I thought, was that heaven?
Mm,
And I I believe it was.
mm,
So, but yes, I mean, like, the whole dying thing is just a progression. It's hard to lose a loved one for sure,
mhm,
but I know that they're in a great place
mhm.
and they're not thinking, "Oh, I wish I hadn't died." No, no, it's just part of the progression. So when it just wasn't my time to go,
Mhm,
but when it is, like, that's great. I'm not, a lot of people are afraid of death,
mhm,
and there's no reason to be afraid.
mm.
So,
It's
yeah,
going home.
it's very calming for me to know that, because you always kind of fear death, you
Yeah.
know.
Because it
But
is the unknown, but since you've been
yeah,
there, even for a little blip,
yes,
it's okay, is
yeah,
what you're saying.
yes. No, and it's where we want to be, and I look forward to the day that that happens.
Yeah,
So, and it could be 2 weeks, it could be 20 years, who knows?
yeah, 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 yeah.
So, it's like the day before your life changes forever is just an ordinary day.
Mm,
And it is like, there wasn't a party, like a going away party for me. There wasn't
mhm.
like, I didn't like call everybody I knew that day, like tell them goodbye, or,
Yeah.
you know,
No,
it
there's no way
wasn't,
you could have known.
no. And it's that phone call that changes your life. It's a car accident that changes your life. Things just happen in an instant and you don't get that time back.
Yeah.
And so it
Wow.
takes a lot more energy to be grumpy and feel sorry for yourself than it does to be happy
Ooh.
and pivot your life and make it better.
So let me
So,
ask you this, because you went from this beautiful place to being pulled back into your body to recovering where you were in an extreme amount of pain.
oh, it was
Um,
terrible.
why don't you take me to there? Because I can imagine that switch from peace to extreme pain was probably not only mentally challenging, physically
Right.
challenging, but emotionally challenging as well.
Yes.
So tell us how you were able to do that and what it looked like. Oh my gosh.
um, the first time I remember waking up, my family was all there in the ICU room. My little brother and his family had come from California. I was laying there. I had like 19 IVs. I had this thing. I was on a ventilator. They had just taken it out. Like, I have tubes everywhere.
Mm,
And I didn't know what had happened to me. I was like, why am I here?
yeah.
And my family's all just like shocked and horrified and happy that I'm awake, because it's been like 5 days. I was coherent during that 5 days, but I don't remember any of it.
Mm.
So it's just kind of a blessing,
Yeah,
because I don't
probably.
think I don't think it was pretty, according to what my kids, went through just waiting. But yeah, my whole family was there, and I thought they were trying to kill me
Oh no.
because I wanted some water. So I'm like, why are you all here? I'm like, I need water because my, throat was just like sand. And I couldn't, because I'd gone into kidney failure, colon failure, and liver failure. And they had to go back and recreate those arteries because they had not come back after they actually, like, kind of freeze your body. They don't freeze it, but they bring it down, I think, 56 degrees during the surgery to just preserve, like, your brain and your organs and stuff.
Jeez.
So I, like, had no idea what they were doing, and they wouldn't give me water. So in my mind, my freakishly, like, over sedated, over anesthesia mind was thinking they were there doing tests on me and trying to kill me.
Oh god.
So yeah, it took a while for me to kind of understand what had happened. And, like, it was months before I ever really delved into, like, Googling it and, like, watching a procedure. It was because this was in 2012, and I asked my cardiothoracic surgeon how many dissections they had done that year, and he said, "You were number 4, so they don't get to do it very often."
Mm.
Because they never really get the chance to do it. But he said, yeah, and yours was by far the worst case, and you were the only one that survived.
Wow.
So, yeah. So then you're kind of like, oh, what am I supposed to do?
Yeah.
What, what?
Obviously, I'm back for a reason, even though I'd
Yes,
rather be in the other place.
I know.
Um,
I'm
so
like, yeah, they just didn't want me up there. Not
I
yet.
don't think that's it, Teri.
No,
Not at all.
not
Not at
yet.
all. You had to teach us a few things from your story, I think, first.
No.
So talk me through this recovery because, I mean, things like climbing the stairs or even walking to the bathroom, things that you
Yeah,
used to do without even thinking about them, all of a
not
sudden
even,
became
yeah,
like the hardest thing in the whole wide world. Tell,
right.
tell me what that looked like.
Well, when I would get up and walk with my physical therapist around like the nurses station and stuff when I was in the hospital. Like, and it was a killer. It was all I could do to literally walk around this little circle. And
Mm,
I had been crazy that summer because this happened in October. My birthday, my 50th birthday was September 1st. So the summer before, I mean, I'm thinking, okay, I'm going to be 50 and I'm divorced. Two things you never think are going to happen to you.
right.
Like, I'm never going to be 50. And so I like I biked hundreds of miles on my bike a week. I would go to the gym all the time. And, I was getting in really good shape. And I mean, I've always taken really good care of myself, but I literally just got in the best shape I had been in for years.
Hmm.
And my doctor told me, he said, had you not been in such good shape, there's no way you would have survived.
Wow.
I think mostly when I was doing all that crazy stuff, like just like every day after work, I would just go run or hike or bike or go to the gym. But I think also I was running from like my life. Like
Mm,
that's the only way I could get away from my life.
mm,
And because it was kind of turned upside down at the time, and it was the only way I could kind of stay sane.
mm.
I had no idea that I was, preparing to fight for my life.
Right.
So
So you were probably using exercise not only as, hey, I'm trying to get myself in shape, but also as a coping strategy, like
actually, yes,
a distraction
yeah,
almost.
yeah. I just was not like, I didn't want to think about my life
Mm,
because it was kind of rotten at the time.
mm. Wow.
So,
So tell me how the strategies of exercising and stuff like that played into your recovery, just that mentality of pushing and trying to do more than you could the day before, I guess.
right. Yes, I was sidelined for quite a while. Um, the only thing I looked forward to the whole time I was in the hospital was just getting home to my own bed. Like, everything would be fine, when I got home, and I would be just fine because the last time I was in my house, I was perfectly fine.
Right.
So my physical therapist on the last day said, "Hey, do you have stairs in your house?" And I'm like, "Yeah, my bedroom's on the second level." And he said, "Maybe we should try some stairs." And I'm like, "Nah, I'm good. I got it. I mean, stairs, how hard can they be?"
Hmm.
And I remember getting in the car to come home, and just the vibration of the car, like, was causing so much pain in my chest. And just my whole body was just racked by the time we got home. And I have 2 steps to get into my kitchen from the garage. And I thought I was barely made it up those two.
Wow.
And I kept thinking, I've got to go upstairs. I just want to get in my bed. I just want to get in my bed. So my daughter and I do talk about that, those first 8 stairs and then the second 8 stairs, and how I nearly collapsed. And like, my daughter was so scared. she was like, Mom, should I call the neighbors? Should I call someone to help? And I'm like, no, I can do this. And finally it took a lot to get up the stairs. And I thought, wow, I ran up and down those stairs a million times and I've never thought twice about it. And that became like one of my enemies, was that staircase for a really long time. But we conquered it at some point. But yeah, but I think about that every day as I run up those stairs. I think there was a time when you couldn't do it without just unbearable pain.
Yeah.
So yeah. And then I got up to my room and my bed was high and I couldn't get on my bed.
Oh.
I'm like, I'm just going to go. I have a little love seat. And so I just went and sat on my love seat. And I slept on that love seat for probably 2-3 months.
Wow.
So, because I couldn't lay down. Like the pressure was just too much. Wow. So, yeah. I mean, my daughter kept saying, just keep trying. It'll happen. It'll happen.
It's probably easier for her to say that than it is for you to do it when you're like, I just really just want to lay down in my bed, but I can't.
Yeah.
How do you fight that mental battle? You wrote in your book about just the battle of sleeping and not being able to sleep because you were so uncomfortable. And here's a great quote from your book: "You can't conquer this kind of problem with a single battle. I had many more battles ahead of me, but at least I'd won this one." So you made it through one night.
And
one night, which was a battle, right?
Yes. Every day it became like that. Like I just had to just battle it that day. And the sleeping part was definitely an issue for a long time. And my doctor did mention one thing to me. He said, when you have a really bad trauma, could have been a car accident or anything like that, when you've had that kind of trauma and that your subconscious, you don't really feel it, but your subconscious also is afraid that if you go to sleep, you'll never wake up. So it's kind of a mental game with that whole thing. So it was hard. I mean, I'm still a terrible sleeper, but I'm in my bed. Yay.
And you can lay down flat now, right?
Oh my gosh, it's so great.
We're going to take a quick break, but when we get back, we will have Teri tell us a little bit about her purpose for living and how God helped her throughout her strenuous recovery. How many of you out there feel like your life is chaotic, crazy, and completely awful compared to the norm? What if I were to tell you that you are normal for you? I am so excited to announce that my book, Normal for Me by Tamara K. Anderson, is now available for purchase on Amazon. This book took me 10 years to write, and I share 20 years worth of lessons learned in my life detours, including being in a car accident and having 2 of my children diagnosed on the autism spectrum. In this book, I share the secrets of how I made it from despair to peace with God's help. I also include a bonus diagnosis survival guide at the very end of my Normal for Me book. The Diagnosis Survival Guide includes 12 tips to survive and thrive in tough times. Wouldn't you like to know what those are? So what are you waiting for? Grab your copy of Normal for Me today on Amazon. And we're back. I've been talking to Teri Benson about her recovery from an aortic dissection and how crazy that was. Now, you mention in your book, and I'm going to read this quote too, because I think tells a lot of how you made it through those long, long nights and those difficult challenges. You say, "Heavenly Father heard me. I pleaded for the strength to get through this and not let myself get discouraged. I need to get better," I prayed. "I need to get strong again. I have so much I want to do. I'm so grateful to have this second chance at life, and I want to live it, really live. I prayed about my love and gratitude for my 3 kids who had been by my side for weeks. I thanked Heavenly Father for the support of my family and friends and continued to beg for courage to persevere. As I prayed, I felt a sense of renewed strength. Hard as it was, this was possible. And I love that.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, you can't do it alone.
No,
Absolutely not. You
no.
know, and we're kind of not in charge. So at the end of the day, you can make all the plans you want, but it's not up to us. So
It's up to
I
God. Yeah.
absolutely. I mean,
So,
there's a plan. I've always known there was a plan, but now I know there's really a plan.
mm,
So, and like I said, doesn't matter what you plan or what you think you should be doing. Someone else has a better idea of what you should be doing.
right. So part of your strength to get through on those daily battles came from God. Part of it came from friends and family who came and helped. So uh, we'll call them angels here on earth, right? People
Yeah.
that came to your aid and helped you through it. But you also had to have that inner will to work and to live. And a lot of that I noticed throughout your book was your kids.
Yes.
That was why you worked so hard. You wanted to not only get better so you could be a good mom, but you wanted to show them that to be an example that I can conquer my demons and you can too.
Right.
So tell me what these next few months looked like for you as you pushed forward every day, Teri, because I know it wasn't easy.
No. Just washing yourself or washing your hair or getting dressed. Like my cute daughter has done and seen things that no daughter should ever have to do.
Right?
Like, oh my gosh, she was just an angel. But it's like I couldn't lift my arms. Like 4 months, I couldn't drive. I couldn't do anything. Basically, I could eat
Mhm.
and I could go to the bathroom by myself. But those were the two things I just like. I couldn't use my arms for any kind of support.
Wow.
And then just the whole physical therapy. I remember I think it was my first day at the cardiac rehab center. And I think it had been about 6 or 7 weeks because he didn't want me doing physical therapy right away. I mean, I had a home care guys come in, but I didn't do a lot of physical therapy. So I went for my first one and, they put the electrodes on you and you have a little monitor and they watch what you're doing. And they took me over to the treadmill and there is a guy that looks like he's, well into his 80s. He's got an oxygen tank and like my physical therapist set my treadmill to 1.1 miles an hour. And I look over at the guy, the 80-year-old guy next to me, and he's going 2 miles an hour. And I'm like, that dude's going faster than me. That is not funny. That's not acceptable. Why? How can he? And he's got oxygen, you know? So, yeah, I was kind of that rebel, like at cardiac rehab, that I would, like, when they would walk away, I would turn up the treadmill, or turn up the gears,
1.2.
whatever it was. I was like, no, I can do more than that. Once I decided, and when I really knew and accepted my new life, I was going to be relentless in my recovery. And so many setbacks. Oh my gosh, so many tears, so much, disappointment. But
Mhm.
I kept thinking, I've got to do it. That's kind of like my little stubborn side for sure. Like
But you
you
needed
are,
it. You
yes,
needed it.
yeah.
That
Remember, yeah,
resilience.
I didn't complain to my family at all because I couldn't do that to them. So the only person I would complain to was my cardiothoracic surgeon when
Oh.
I'd go see him.
Ah.
And so I told him one day, I said, if I'm never going to run again or work again or do all the things that I love, like, how am I ever going to be happy?
Mm.
And he scooted his little chair over and he grabbed my hands and he said, you know what? You are going to find things that you would have never known that bring you happiness. That's what you'll, from the dissection, from this, you will find other things. And I was like, okay, I don't understand. And I certainly don't believe that that's true. Like that could happen, because I thought, you know, like, what am I going to do? You know, I kept asking him, like, at my year checkup, I was like, so do you think I can go skiing? Because it was winter.
Mm-hmm.
And he's like, no, I'm not going to let you. You know, he's like, really, I've never had a patient survive this. So you're kind of like my little pet project. Like he's like, I've never had anybody, so I can't tell you what's happening. He wrote about me in the World Medical Journal, like
Wow.
subject A or whatever, because he's like, when I saw those CT scan images come through, he didn't even think that I would make it there alive in the ambulance. He said, so I fully didn't even plan on doing the surgery. So weird, because he said, and then I came in and I met you. And the other crazy thing is that my brother had gotten there, and he gave me a blessing, which is, if you don't know, it's kind of like praying for someone, but they actually directed at you and they lay their hands on your head. And my brother, so the doctor left the room and my brother gave me a blessing. And my doctor said after, he said, it's weird. I was in the hallway and he said, something told me that I just needed to try. I just need to try and save her. So, yeah, I mean, there was a lot of, all the planets had to line up just right for me to survive that night. And they did. They did.
Yeah.
That's the craziest thing.
Wow, such a miracle. So looking back, lessons learned, we've already talked about a couple of them. First of all, God is in charge, right? He's got a plan. And that means that your plan probably isn't always going to turn out. So it's okay. You
It
can give
never
that
does.
control over to God, right?
Right.
Talk to me about choosing joy, because we've mentioned this briefly about choosing happiness. Why is this such a critical battle? Because a lot of those things, are a battle inside your brain. So talk to me
Yes.
about what that looked like for you. What did you do to choose joy on a daily basis?
I think just praying every day for the strength, and for the strength to be happy, or to have a good attitude. I literally prayed my guts out every day that I would be able to do this and that I would recover. But in my mind, I'm thinking, no way this is ever going to happen. Like I'm never going to be normal again. So that was one of the things. And then I just had such a support, an army of people, friends, neighbors, family, like, we're constantly, it's so funny. I'll tell you one thing. When I was in the hospital and they had just moved me to a regular room.
Mm-hmm.
I had been out of critical care, and my 3 kids were there, and my oldest son, Dallin, who's the one that's married and has the baby, he was so cute. He just said, Mom, you know what? God knew that we needed angels, and you know what? They're everywhere, and they are taking care of us. Like, they're everywhere. And so my kids actually know now, like, how to react when someone else goes through a crisis or something like that. Like, just be supportive and loving, and how much that means. Because he was like, we had no idea how many people love us. We had no idea the amount of love and support that, my kids just felt so blessed.
Wow.
And, like people that so unexpected that would just drop in or drop by or, bring food or, it was just.
You mentioned your daughter's birthday and how people bailed you out for that too.
Yes. Like, cause I'm thinking, okay, I'm like, I can't leave the house. I can't drive. What are we going to do for her birthday?
Uh-huh.
And literally, like, I had friends that made it happen. And, and that was a special birthday for her because, she was like, I could have lost my mom. I mean, I could be celebrating without you.
Mm,
So, yeah.
yeah. So let me ask you this, because often allowing people to come in and serve you is it's a battle in and of itself, because we have that sense that, okay, I need to be self-sufficient, I need to take care of myself, I need to take care of my family, but obviously you were in a situation where you couldn't do that. What did you do to be able to allow yourself to be served? Was it a mental shift? What did that look like?
Oh, I'm that person that like, no, I'm good. I'm good. I don't need the help. I, and so like I would feel guilty. Like my friend would come and clean. And I'm
Mm,
just like, oh, I should be, it just made
mhm,
me so uncomfortable to be served.
mhm,
And I finally realized there's a time and a season. And it gives, when something happens to someone, it gives a reason for someone to be able to serve, that they get those blessings from serving you. And I just had to kind of just change my mindset and think, okay, this is just a season. I've served others,
mhm,
when they were having, whatever it was. But I thought also it was good for my kids to see that too, because
mm,
then they know how to reciprocate, you know, that in the future.
yeah.
So, and how important it is. Like just a phone call or a text sometimes would be like, oh, that made me feel so much better. It would like brighten my day or,
Mhm. So it can be
so
little things you can do to
little
serve.
things. Yes. But I really had to just change my mindset because I am not one that likes to be served.
Yeah.
You know, I have a hard time accepting help, but I
Yeah.
didn't really have any choice. I
Yeah.
had to. I mean, I really kind of had to. Like,
Yeah.
yeah, every day when I open my eyes, I am still so grateful every morning to be here. We have good days and bad days. You have hard days, and I'm still grateful for
Mhm.
those. I look back and I think I would have missed out on so many things had I not survived.
So, obviously, people know that physically you're doing amazing right now
Yeah,
compared to probably most aortic dissection people even, you know?
right. Yes.
So, what tips would you give to someone who is just really, really struggling right now to maybe they're facing, a Christmas like you did that first year where you feel like life is just coming apart at the seams. What advice would you give to someone who's facing a really hard time?
Well, I think first of all, you have to find a reason,
Mm,
whatever that reason is. You have to have something that keeps you going. And you have to, like, my reason was my kids.
mhm,
Like, I just knew that I needed to be here and I needed to be better for them.
mm,
And it's not easy. Like, there were days that I was just like, I wouldn't even like get out of bed. I mean, it's, a lot of it's mental depression,
mhm,
but I was so physically like fragile and just frail. But I feel like if you wake up every day and you think, okay, I have a purpose,
mm,
no matter what it is, you have to find a purpose. You have to find something that you have to live for.
mm,
And I just honestly, it's hard. It's hard to choose joy sometimes,
mhm,
a lot of times, but you have got to figure out what it is that you're living for and just be accepting of your life.
mm,
Like, I finally have just like, no matter how upset I get or how sad I get about my condition, it's not going to change it.
mm,
So, you just, I don't know. I really had to work on that because I thought my life was over. Then I started walking, and any little thing, just walking down the block made me so happy,
mm.
and I feel like if you can find small victories every day, like when I walked up the stairs my first time by myself. I mean, how ridiculous is that? But that made me so happy. Like, you have to find some kind of joy. in whatever it is you're doing. And
Mm,
but it's a choice.
yeah. Yeah.
And I think if you have someone or something, like I had my kids, you have to have a reason and you have to find that reason.
Yeah.
So,
And to set those little goals. They may seem
mhm,
super ridiculous to anybody else, but maybe they are so meaningful to you, like climbing those stairs, because it was such an impossibility almost that first time you did it. And so
right,
climbing the stairs by yourself was like huge.
right.
So almost don't compare yourself now to maybe who you were before. You probably almost have to say, I'm different and it's okay, right?
Yes. When I would go run or bike or whatever I was doing, I always had to do it a little bit faster than I'd done it the previous time, or I
Hmm.
had to go a little bit further. And there just wasn't a lot of joy in it, not so much joy in the journey. And now it's like, I want to go out and just ride my bike for fun. Like I don't
Mm,
have to go faster or further than I did the day before. And that part I do like about myself is that, I can just find joy just walking my dog,
mhm,
and I don't have to be running a marathon or, proving something to it, for anybody but me.
mm.
And it took me the whole 2.5 years to figure that out. And I still do get kind of bummed when there's stuff I can't do because there's days I don't feel 100%.
Mhm.
And the medications I take make me very lethargic and tired.
Oh.
So I fight fatigue all the time. So I'm going to do it regardless if I'm tired or not
I
because,
love I love that you haven't let this challenge slow you down. That you here you are 8 years later, you're setting goals like, "I'm hiking Angel's Landing." You know? You're like, "And I'm gonna do it." And you do. You do
yeah,
it. You're mentioning to me before that you went paragliding, and I'm like, "Oh my gosh." There you go. So
it
you're
was very
setting
trippy.
these goals. You're
Yeah,
living your life
right.
now.
I missed out on a lot of joy and happiness for years and years and years when I was in a bad marriage. And it takes work every single day. But honestly, I think if you just find something to be grateful for every day, I mean, gosh, I got to brush my teeth. Like, I was like, I did that by myself. Yay.
Yay.
Just those little things, or getting dressed. Like, I couldn't get myself dressed for months. So I had a lot of little victories, but you have to take it one day at a time.
Mm, I love that
And
advice.
just honestly, that's the key for me is that I wake up every morning and I'm so grateful. And COVID has just changed everybody's lives.
Mhm,
But what are we going to do about it?
mhm.
We're going to do what we have to do.
Yeah.
We're going to wear a mask even though we hate them. We're going to,
Yes.
we're going to socially distance even though we hate doing that. So, I mean, because if you complain about it or you're mad about it or it doesn't change it. Like
Yeah.
you're still going to do it. So I choose joy instead of, you know, being unhappy over what you can be unhappy about.
Oh,
Because in these days, there's a lot to be unhappy
oh my
about.
gosh. It really is a choice, and I think part of it boils down to also picking what you fill your life with. If all you fill your life with is negative, 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 I think you're gonna have an easier time being negative all the time.
Yes,
But and so instead, you might need to make a conscious choice and say, "I'm gonna fill my life with positives today.
yeah,
I'm gonna turn off media for a day and just find a positive podcast to listen to, or I'm going to
yes,
read a good book or listen to a good book, and just
yes,
fill your life with positivity. So making the choice to be positive and joyful is
yes,
easier, right?
right. And I kind of don't know if I willed my life to like recover after 2.5 years. Like I just
Uh-huh.
never gave up hope that I would ski and bike and do all this stuff. In the back of my mind, I just kept thinking, there's no way you can't do this. Like, and so at 2.5 years, my doctor was like, I had had a scan, and he's like, I can't believe I'm going to say this, but if you want to go skiing, go ahead. And he said, but be mindful because we do not know what sort of trauma you can withstand. We have no idea,
Yeah.
or
Be careful.
just remember it's not worth your life if
Mm.
So, I mean, and that's me. Like, I was always just like, oh, I've got to go faster, strong,
Mhm.
and now I'm like, no, I'm just going to go, and so
You're
much
going to go
better.
and enjoy it.
Yes. Like, I hike and I love to just stop and look at the beauty, because sometimes you just get that tunnel vision and you kind of forget to just stop and look around and just be grateful. We live in the most beautiful place.
Mm.
And for a long time, I didn't even notice because
Wow.
you're too busy being stressed out, being unhappy, and not caring. So,
Mm.
yes, having a dissection was definitely the best thing that ever happened to me because it changed my life incredibly. It put life into perspective for me,
Yeah,
for sure.
absolutely.
And life can be very short. Some things will just change your life forever.
Mm.
And it's not always a bad thing.
Yeah.
So,
It may feel like a bad thing at the moment because admit it,
oh,
that first year, it probably
absolutely.
felt like the
Yes.
worst thing in ever.
Ever. Yes. No.
But hindsight's always 2020. So looking back,
Always.
you'll
Yeah.
see the blessings and the miracles. Absolutely.
Yes.
So let me ask you this, Teri. What resources would you recommend to people who are struggling? Obviously, your book, it's called
Yes.
How My Ordinary Became Extraordinary. And
Yes.
that's basically the first year of your recovery. And also tell us about this new book that's coming out in the spring.
Yes. I decided that because when I wrote my book, I wrote it from the day the dissection happened till exactly 1 year later. So
Mhm.
at that point, I don't know if I'm ever going to get on my bike or if I'm ever going to, do anything. Like,
Right.
I don't know. And I've had a lot of lessons have been learned, in the past 8 years.
Yes.
Um, and just my physical recovery I just kept getting stronger. And there's just a lot that happened after. My new book is called Beautifully Broken, and I'm getting close to having it finished. My goal is to have it fully written by the end of December, but it's basically my story again, but now I tell it better and I add more things. I add more things to it because I did die for 26 minutes. So, yeah, I talk about that a lot more in the next book. When you have a near death experience, I feel like people want to hear about it because
Yeah.
I think it gives them hope. And because people are very curious about death and they're very scared about death,
Yes.
and there's nothing to be afraid of.
And that's so
Yeah.
good to hear.
Yeah. Well, and like I said, no one probably that reads my book is going to have an aortic dissection, but people have struggles every day.
Mhm.
And sometimes you just need to read someone's story or hear someone's story to kind of go, okay, well, they did this. So maybe if I work on this, I'll progress.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. No, I agree. And that's one of the reasons I do this podcast is it is so awesome to hear other stories of people who've been through hard things. And often we do learn the same lessons, but sometimes the way someone tells their story may impact you a different way. I love one of the final quotes in your book. And it says, I will remember the victories I've already obtained and pray for the strength to rise up and fight the next battle. I will feel my heart beat as I fall asleep and prepare for the next day. I will keep going. I'm not at the beautiful place, but I know it's waiting for me. Until then, I will strive to make this life the best it can be. I'll get there eventually. Tomorrow is just the next step.
it's true. There's always tomorrow.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like if you fill your life with the gratitude, those kind of thoughts, your life is just instantly happier.
Where can we find you online?
You know what? My Facebook is just Teri Benson, Teri, and then Benson, Benson. And then my Instagram is Teri Benson 48. You can find me there. I will definitely announce my release of my new book on there. So,
Yay!
yeah.
I'm excited for that. Can't wait to read version 2.
Yeah.
Because version 1 is so beautiful, and you just feel
Oh,
like you want to cheer for Teri. And your book's available on Amazon, right?
yes.
Awesome. Perfect.
Oh,
So go check out her book, How My Ordinary Became Extraordinary. It's available today, and you can also get her new book as it comes out in the spring. Beautifully Broken.
thank you for letting me share my story, because if it just helps or touches one life, that makes all the difference in the world. So,
Oh,
and just make each day extraordinary. That's kind of my mantra for every day.
Hey, thanks so much for listening to today's show. I know that there are many of you out there that are going through a hard time, and I hope you found things that have been useful today as you listen to the podcast. If you would like to access the show notes from today's podcast, visit my website. It is storiesofhopepodcast.com. That is where you'll find favorite quotes from today's episode and shareable memes. And those are fun because you can share them with your friends on social media. You will also find the links mentioned throughout today's episode, so you don't have to remember what those were. And also all the tips that were shared. Sometimes tips are shared so much throughout an episode you forget. What were those great things? So go to the show notes, storiesofhopepodcast.com, to look up these fantastic resources. You know, if someone kept coming to mind during today's episode, perhaps that means that you should share this with them. Maybe there was a story shared or a tip that they really need to hear. So go ahead and share this episode with them. May God bless you, especially if you are struggling, with hope to carry on and with the strength to keep going when things get tough. Remember to walk with Christ, and He will help bear that burden. Above all else, remember, God loves you.